This is
Okay,
how
cool.
to be a podcaster 101.
Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty fully expecting me to, when I edit this, actually this is the intro, and then I'm gonna do the intro, but it's just all gonna start from about 2 seconds ago. Um, do I do sexy podcaster voice? Should I be like,
No.
hello?
Don't be sexy, I'm
Welcome
your
to
sister.
Teather Time. Um,
Go away.
oh, that would be so funny.
Are you?
I don't know.
What are we
Hello,
doing? We don't know what we're doing. Are you starting?
Hello, this is Teather Time. This is Eleanor on the beautiful phone tripod stand thing.
I made it out of a loo roll today.
Yes, this is beautiful. Hopefully I'll get Eleanor an actual tripod like I've got here for my phone.
This is working so well. Cut to when I inevitably falls over in an hour's time. But at the moment it's working really well and I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, Eleanor wanted a whole intro thing, but I can't do intros, so my best bet is like I was going to say Eleanor is a master's student, soon to be PhD student. I'm an undergrad, but as of 3 days ago, I just failed my exam, so I'm not really an undergrad anymore, so I can't really say that.
She's maybe an undergrad. Also, she didn't fail her exams. We're going to give her some credit.
No, people keep saying this. No, I objectively failed. Failure is not achieving the grades you need to achieve to continue on your course. This is what I did. I don't hate myself. I'm very happy with the fact that I failed. I've accepted it, but other people have not accepted it yet.
But I'm just saying, do we want to be giving people advice? If we're going to get people to come and listen to us talk and give us advice... I just got a message that my phone is heating up. It's a heat wave!
Nice. Oh yeah, also, if anyone is in England listening to this, we're dying because it's this weekend. If you live in England or Europe, you'll know what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's not got really bad yet. Tomorrow it's going to be 37 degrees.
Yay! And
but
now we've
yeah.
timestamped this podcast, and it will never be the same again, because people listening back to it will know exactly when we are. We've timestamped it.
Well, there we go. We'd have timestamped it anyway. We'd have said something. But the thing I was going to say is, do we really want to be giving people advice? Being like, oh, we failed. Because you didn't fail, like, as in you didn't pass. You passed all your modules. You just... Yeah.
No, I mean, did I pass, though? Because, like, I didn't get the grade I needed to continue on my degree. This is the whole thing. This is the debate. This is the kind of stuff you're listening to. Hopefully this will be us for the next infinite amount of time talking about our work, lives, and things we're trying and fun stuff.
Yeah.
So, for instance, Eleanor is talking about some really generic study technique that she's using at the moment.
Yeah,
I'm sure she's got opinions on it.
Yeah.
And I've just started using a piece of software called Obsidian to take notes, and so I've got pretty graphs to show people. And so hopefully
did you bring a PowerPoint? I didn't bring anything.
I did not bring a PowerPoint. I'm gonna send you an image. No one else ever needs to see it. It'll be great.
There we go. Yeah. I would say, like, I guess that this is like a mixture of... It's not really advice. It's like, oh, I tried this thing and it didn't work, or I tried this thing and it did work. And, like, coming at this from, like, 2 different perspectives of study. We might.
I like how it's taken us precisely 4 minutes to have our first car horn in the background.
I was going to say, we live in a student place. Yeah. But it's like a mixture of us talking about like things that we've learned, but coming at it from the 2 different perspectives of you're earlier in your higher education career.
Also, I don't try as hard as Eleanor. Yeah. I'm much more of like let's do 20% of the work and get 80% of the results.
I'm a... What's the thing? What am I, Frederica? What am I?
You said recovering workaholic the other day.
Recovering workaholic. That's not what I was going for. I was going for, gifted burnout kid. That's what I am. But still a try-hard. But I do like trying hard. Because I like my degree. And I like studying.
Eleanor actually liked her degree, so she does well.
Yeah. So I'm going to be here to talk about how to not have a mental breakdown whilst doing a degree. And also, like, interesting things I've picked up about studying, but also work-life balance. And Frederica is maybe a work-life balance in the other direction.
Yeah, I'm like, maybe I should actually do some work, you know? And if any of the people listening, I don't know if there's listeners. I don't think there's listeners. I think we're talking to the void. We're just talking to each other. But my main inspiration for this is if anyone has read the book Show Your Work by... Imagine if I knew the name, that would be a good podcast. But Show Your Work, Ali Abdul recommended it. It's a really good book about how you should just you don't need to be an expert. You just need to show your process of doing work, and people will find it interesting because there's probably someone who's thinking about going to uni or thinking about doing a master's degree or thinking about doing in a few months a PhD degree, and a PhD, and they'll be interested in our experiences, whether we're actually good or not. They'll just be interested in our experiences. So that's kind of the inspiration.
It's Show Your Work! By Austin Kleon. Kleon?
Yeah.
I think Kleon.
Audiobook's amazing.
Yeah. To give, because with the important detail that we missed out, why is the show called Teather Time? What the hell is a tether? We're a tether!
We are tethers, yes. There are more tethers in the house I'm in at the moment, because we're sisters, and then there's a mother tether, and then there's a father who's not a tether. But the rest of us are tethers, it's great.
Yes, so I am Eleanor Tether, and this is my baby sister, Frederica Tether.
You can't see on camera, but Eleanor's tiny. It will be funnier when we film in person, when we're both living at home.
Yeah.
Because Eleanor is 5'1.5", and I'm something between 8 and 9.
I was going to say 5'2". You could round it up for me, which is 157 centimeters if you use a sensible system of measurement.
Yeah. What do you mean? Imperial? Best measuring style? No, please don't cancel me. I'm not a Tory. I don't like the Imperial measurement.
With 5 minutes in, you're getting cancelled for being pro-Imperial units of measurement. And then the other important detail, because I guess this is relevant, is that I am doing an MSc in materials science, and I'm going to be doing a PhD also in the field of materials science. Yeah.
Why though?
Because it's so much fun.
Yeah, what do you like about your masters?
Ooh, okay. Ooh. The first question.
Big question.
What do I like about my masters? I really like looking at things and being able to, like, say, from an atomic level, how the properties of a material emerge. So, and that's what material science is all about, because I started off, my undergraduate degree was natural sciences, majoring in chemistry with a minor in maths. If you don't know, natural sciences is a degree. So in the UK, people usually do one subject at university, but natural sciences is a degree that enables you to do a range of subjects from across the sciences, and it's only offered at a small number of universities. So I mostly did chemistry, I also did maths, and I also did a few other subjects sprinkled here and there as part of my degree, because just one wasn't enough for me. But mainly my sciencey background is in chemistry, and I like all the atom stuff. And then I think that specifically that idea of, like, we're looking at the atoms or the molecules or whatever that make a thing up, and we're looking at what they do, and then also on kind of like slightly larger scales, like if we get a clump of atoms together, what do they do, and then how does that affect the properties of the material? And I just think that is really, really fascinating, and that specific idea is what makes materials science as a discipline. All material scientists find that interesting, or hopefully they do. So yeah, that's what I like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that made sense to me. I don't know. Yeah, you. I don't know if you could tell that Eleanor has previously worked as a student ambassador when describing why natural sciences is great, because that was a very rehearsed speech.
It was. I like the fact that it's not. It's not from being a student ambassador. It's from the fact that no one knows what my degree is, especially because my degree had like a slightly different title. So like, but I would be like, I do this degree, and people would be like, what on earth is that? And then I'd have to explain to everyone I ever met. So I'm well practiced at it. It's quite nice now. I say I still have the same problem. They say, what do you do? And I say material science, and people don't know what that is. So
maybe you should just do a normal personal subject, Eleanor.
You were doing human resource management.
Yeah, so I feel like it should be noted here. Yeah, so mentioned. I just didn't pass because I'm not a failure. I just didn't pass.
That's what I meant.
That was so bad. That disco. I'm hoping your phone picked up that, because the Discord call did not pick up whatever you just said.
It's a mystery.
It's a mystery. No, I did a year of management and human resources with a minor in computer science, and then also accounting and finance. But that just kind of felt like part of the management side of the course, and like, I'm not a fan of late stage capitalism.
She'd been at university for 3 months, and she was like, "I'm a Marxist."
Well, you gotta love Daddy Marx. Like, he's just a cool dude, you know, and he's the only academic who cares about workers. Because mainstream capitalism not very fun.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I just literally 4 days before recording this, I got my results back and I didn't pass. So I'm moving home and I'm looking at other options right now. The top of the list is computer science because I did really well in computer science this year in the minor. I mean, it wasn't like top level computer science; it was an introduction course, but I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm like, yeah, computer science, but also like I don't know anything that isn't at my uni because Lancaster's a nice uni, but did not work for me. Not a fan. Wouldn't recommend.
I
Not
feel,
the
well,
vibe.
you had some really good experiences there in other areas, but it was just...
Yeah, yeah. Just being that far away from home didn't work for me. So I'm like, but yeah. Well, when I say that, you're gonna hear the progression on this podcast as I decide what I'm gonna do with my life.
Yeah, I feel like this is actually,
Great.
because I was like, this is quite a random point for us to start a podcast. Really, September would make more sense because I'm starting my PhD, but we just got really excited and wanted to start. And also, we thought if we didn't start, we never would do it. So, but now it makes sense.
Also, this episode is probably gonna be absolute garbage. So I'm assuming the only people watching this are our future thousands of fans who want to watch the podcast from the beginning, and that's like, I think that's the people watching this realistically.
Yes. When we have thousands and thousands and millions of...
Oh yes, the ego
followers.
is just coming out here with us being like, oh, we're gonna get thousands of listeners. We're gonna be so cool.
I don't think when we say it sarcastically, it counts.
Wait till we're being interviewed on other podcasts. You know, like
I'm only
ultimate-
doing this so that I can get to be a guest on all my favourite podcasts.
Yeah, same. Like honestly, I just want to be the guest on Ali Abdul's deep dive, being like, oh, you're 21. How did you become a computer scientist and start a podcast all at the same time? Tell me more. You know,
That's so much deeper. Mine is literally like, I want to be on 3 Black Halflings and we're having gay sex.
I don't. We should be noted here. Eleanor's the straight one here.
Yeah.
The disappointment.
Yeah, I'm the family disappointment. Shall we get actually started?
Do we have to?
Well, I feel like we've waffled plenty enough.
I think that was peak waffling.
Yeah.
I think the whole podcast should just be that. I think that was great.
Just us
Yeah.
waffling.
So we've both in the last week, we've both sent each other messages being like, well, Eleanor told me on a call, but we're going to be like, oh, we had this cool thing we want to tell each other. And so, yeah. Eleanor, what's the thing you've been doing that you want to tell me about?
So my, as you described, generic study technique that I want to talk about is the Pomodoro technique, which if
Wow. That was mean.
Well, okay, so if you don't know what it is, because lots of people don't, because I keep telling people about it and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's the idea that you should study in like segments. And the way I was told it was, I can't remember if it was 20 or 25-minute sections. You study for 20 or 25 minutes and then you have a 5-minute break and then you study for another 20 minutes, 5-minute break, study for another 20 minutes, 15-minute break. And you study in cycles like this. I don't know why it's called a Pomodoro. That's something to do with tomatoes. But yeah, that is what it's called. And when I was taught this in school, I was taught it in this very rigid, like, oh, you have to do it in 20-minute sections because of this. There's been studies that have shown that when you're studying, your attention peaks. Like a 20-minute is the optimum time to do studying in because your attention peaks at a certain point, and within the 20-minute section, you're like, oh, well, I just started and now I'm in my stride and then like I've stopped. But I found this really difficult because it was just too rigid for what, sometimes it worked for me, but often it was just too rigid for what I wanted to do. And I tend to like hyper-focus. So if I've got really into my studying, after 20 minutes, I'll be like, but I'm really enjoying this and I don't want to stop. So I gave it another. I kind of tried it and then dismissed it as like, this is rubbish, this doesn't work for me. And then I came across, of all things, a Tumblr post screenshotted onto Pinterest about the idea that you could do the Pomodoro technique, but do it in like 10 minutes, 5 minutes break, 20 minutes, 5 minutes break, 30-minute, 5-minute break, 40 minutes, 5 minutes break, or whatever. And this kind of opened my eyes to the idea that you can be much more flexible with the Pomodoro technique and change it to suit whatever mood you're in that day. And the reason that they suggested the like gradually increasing one is because that was specifically advice for ADHD, but I think it would just apply to lots of people that like you start off with like a little bit of focus and then you reward yourself and then you keep going up. And by the time you're getting towards the end, you might be starting to, in my case, hyper-focus or just like get more into the like idea and you're getting a bit more, you kind of got to the home stretch so you can push through to a bit longer. And I guess just acknowledging that, like, it's better to do whatever you want, but it's better to do 10 minutes of work and 10 minutes of break on and off the whole time than just, like, not work at all. Yeah. And then the second thing I got really into, which I wanted to share if people don't...
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So, even one of the criticisms I've heard of the Pomodoro technique is, particularly if you're in a, like, more public environment, if you're in your room, it's a bit different. But say you're in the library, what do you do if someone interrupts you with 20 minutes to go on the 40-minute, like, thing? What if you get, like, how do you, like, avoid those kind of issues?
So, I rarely seem to bump into people in the library, so I avoid it. What I would do, because also you get other things like trying to decide, like, do I go to the toilet? This is such a minor problem. Do I go to the toilet in my break or not? Because then I feel like I've lost out on my fun break time. Like, I don't get to do anything nice because I've gone to the toilet and that's taken all my time to walk to the toilet and walk back. So if someone interrupted me, I would probably pause my timer, chat to them, and then go back to it. Because I'm not going to be like, oh, sorry, you have to come back in 15 minutes when I've finished my Pomodoro, so that it fits into my break time. And then you do break up the Pomodoro, which is going to break your concentration, but I think they've come by anyway. And just trying to, unless it's an external thing. So the reason I really like the Pomodoro technique is that I tend to get, if I'm not really focused, I'll be distracted and I'll end up looking up other stuff. And I'll be like, do my work, and then I'll be like, oh, what time do I need to make dinner tonight? Because I'm going out, and then I'll, like, start looking at the weather forecast, or I'll look up how long it's going to take me to walk to whatever I'm doing in the evening, and that kind of thing. And when I Pomodoro, what I do is, okay, I'm going to say, for the next 20 minutes, I'm just concentrating on my work. And in some cases I've done this where I've got, like, a work thing to do and a fun thing to do. I do 20 minutes of the work thing, and then I might do a whole 20 minutes on the fun thing that I have to do. Like, say, I did this when we were planning to go to Paris. I wrote my packing list and I did, like, looking up activities in the, like, fun 20 minutes. Because it was like, then my brain stays focused on one activity and I know I only have to do it for that 20 minutes. And instead of it being, like, flitting about all over the place all of the time, I have these much more, like, concentrated things. And then I don't feel like I'm, like... Because if you're doing your work and then you're getting distracted all the time, I feel guilty. So if I chunk it like that, I don't feel guilty because I'm choosing to take that break. Yeah, that got sidetracked, but did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, no, that was a beautiful side tangent. I like this. Like,
did you?
I don't have to do any of the talking. Eleanor just does all the talking for me. It's great.
You're welcome.
Oh, it's beautiful. I just get to sit back. It's great stuff.
Do you have any?
I was trying to be quiet because a wasp flew into the room, and I was like, close the window. I don't want to get stung on podcast.
Oh my goodness!
Like a literal wasp.
What good clickbait though! First podcast episode.
Oh, that's such a good
stung by wasp.
Like, we can post that as a short, just me, like, standing up, and it's like, the face you pull when you see two wasps flying into your room when you're filming your podcast.
Yeah. Did you have any questions about how I use the Pomodoro technique? I've got one other thing that I think is cool to talk about.
Yeah, talk about your next thing, it's cool.
Yeah, which is also Pomodoro, which I really got into in the last exam period, is study with me videos on YouTube. There's one guy in particular that I highly recommend. And I don't know how to say his name.
This 2016.
Shut up.
2018 study
sheet. Live. Called Abao, I want to say ABAO in Tokyo, who does the most cinematic videos. He's, like, studying, and then there's, like, this incredible backdrop out of their window, and, like, mountains and city, and it's very nice for, like, something cool to look at. And the reason I really like study videos for doing Pomodoros with is one of my problems with Pomodoro is that if I'm timing myself, the temptation to extend my break is a lot stronger. But if I just have to put a YouTube video on and then leave it, and when I'm studying at home, I put it on my second screen, so that really helps. Yeah. So I put it on...
Second screen, gal, I wish.
I bought it for £20 off Facebook Marketplace, and it's really quite bad.
Honestly, buying a £20 monitor, what did you expect? I think you should be grateful you weren't mugged.
Well, yeah. It was one of those where I was like, I need a monitor, and I just need it to work. It uses VGA.
Oh, what a mood! That is
Yeah.
a throwback.
Yeah,
VGA.
I had
I
to
didn't
buy.
even know there were monitors that exist. Does your
I
does your
think it's
laptop even have a
VGA.
VGA port?
I had to buy a converter. I have the most ridiculous setup coming out of my laptop. I have like USB to Ethernet connect converter, HDMI to VGA converter, and then my laptop charger, and sometimes something else plugged into the USB port. It looks
I
like a
mean,
spider.
right now you've got the beautiful laptop cable. I've got headphones coming out so you can't hear Eleanor on my end. Like, it's a good life.
Yeah.
Microphone.
Anyway, let me rave about the study tuber.
Yeah, study with me video.
Yeah, so like really good because then you can't. It's much less tempting to pause it because there's another person who you can see on the screen, even though they don't know you. It feels like you have to keep up with them, and there's like much more of a sort of temptation to follow what they're doing.
I've always got that from. Do you know like the lo-fi hip hop live stream
Yes.
radio? I love doing that because there's people talking about their work in the comments, and then most of it is people going to the mail. I should be doing my work, not reading the comments. And I'm like, haha, I'm actually doing my work.
Yeah. And these videos often like come with lo-fi or like white noise
Yeah.
sounds as well, which I really like for studying too. And then I don't have to spend ages faffing about on Spotify. And I can't. Like I've picked the music, I've picked the video, and now I just have to watch it. Yeah. So yeah, that is my recommendation is if you haven't given the Pomodoro technique a try, give it a try. And if it doesn't work for you, just vary it up. Especially if you're someone who flicks around between tasks and gets distracted while studying.
You're
It's really good
undiagnosed
for
ADHD as well, let's say.
yeah, if you want to like concentrate your focus, it's really good.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I don't know, like, I've tried the Pomodoro technique like a lot of times, but like my issue is I'm like, if I'm enjoying something, I just want to get the work done while I'm in the flow state. I don't know,
Yeah.
I feel like I spend a lot more time trying to access like flow state work instead of the more kind of grindy work for writer you prefer. So like,
Yeah. I think
I'd rather work really well for half an hour and just kind of chill for the other 45 minutes. I don't know.
I feel like the problem is I like am always constantly trying to achieve that, and the amount of work that I need to do for my masters, I can't wait until I'm in like a good vibe.
Yeah.
And it can be annoying Pomodoro for breaking up the vibe, but it's quite good for like I just need to get this piece of work done.
Yeah, every time I've ever used it effectively is like, oh, this is a really boring thing. Like when I did my final exams, I like did like Pomodoro in the exam because I had the time to take breaks, and I was like, okay, I need to grind through these boring exams.
Yeah, and it's also good for oh wait, what was I going to say? My brain is
Pomodoro.
stupid brain. It's good. It's good for something.
Good for grindy work is what you were talking about?
No, I was thinking of something else. Oh, work-life balance. My other thing. Pomodoro is good for work-life balance because it means that you're like forced to take breaks. If you're someone who gets really stuck down in your work, or in my case can like feel guilty for getting up to go to the toilet because you're distracting yourself from your work, Pomodoro is really good because you're like, no, I have to take a break because the Pomodoro says I have to. All right, what was your more
I'll just always take breaks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got a story to tell you. So you need to. Eleanor, you need to read How to Build a Second Brain. It's such a good book.
You know I don't do self-help books.
Yeah, but it's so good. Okay, so this one is like, Eleanor, you know how you take notes when you're doing academic stuff, correct?
Yes.
Imagine if you took notes for your life. So when you like listening to a podcast, and something interesting comes up, you kind of. I'm gonna bring up my notes. I'm gonna bring up obsidian, which I will explain in a second. Building a second brain. What's some things I've noted from it? Yeah. So like when you're like, how do I explain this? In your life, right? It's so easy to be like, oh, I'll just remember blank. I don't know. Like it kind of starts off with I'd say most people around the age of like secondary school, university are like, oh, I can't remember all the things I need to do. Let me get a calendar, right? And you are outsourcing remembering from your brain to something digital or something on paper. And the concept of like how to build a second brain is that you should be doing everything that's not in your brain. You should try to be doing as little as possible in your brain. Everything should be going into a digital system or a paper system. And the author's, I think his name is like Tiago Forte. It's something like that. I'm probably saying it wrong because I'm dyslexic as hell. Like his thing is you should be using a digital system because now digital systems are so searchable. It's really easy to access that information. So when you store something important, rather than spending like hours trying to like find it, you can just. What happened with the light there? Hello.
Oh, sorry. It sounded like there was something like on the roof of my house, and I got really creeped out. I think it was actually someone pulling the bin down the drive outside. I'm so sorry. You're making a beautiful speech. Please continue.
No, it's good. I feel like this is coming off very like prepared. I think we should just talk more like it's a normal conversation.
Okay, right. Well, good. Tell me what you're talking about.
Yeah. But yeah, like this idea of like, oh, everything should be written down because of modern systems. Like I'm using the note taking. I use the note taking system Notion, but he's got a reason you should like a way to help you pick a note taking system. You should be making notes for everything. And his idea is there's like the kind of core of the system is this like he likes this 4-letter acronyms. He admits it in the book. The kind of 4 steps. I'm currently on the 3rd one of reading the book, so I'm not quite done yet. So I'm sure I'll tell you more. But the idea is code. So you have C is for capture, O is for organize, D is for distill, and E is for express. So his idea is that you should capture as much as you can. So capture things which he wrote this. I also got this note. This is just in my capture folder, if I remember correctly. Oh, it's on my phone, but damn it. It's on my phone where I've got the note on that because I haven't got it syncing up properly yet. Yeah, it's this. There's like you should capture things which inspire, resonate, impress, or you think will be like help. Like there's some like emotions he gives, like things you should capture, and so you can capture things like, oh, is there a quote you found really useful, or like he gives an example of like he saw an article about hiring. Was like, well, I know in a couple of years' time if this business goes the way I want it to, I'm going to want to hire more people. So let me note that down so I can kind of hire people. So for you, Eleanor, it might be that you like see an article about how to prepare for what's the final exam on the PhD? What's it called? When
Your
you do the big
Viva.
meeting at the end.
Yeah.
What did you say? The Discord didn't pick it up.
Sorry.
I know the audio would have heard it.
On your Viva.
Viva. You might see an article which is like, oh, here's, and this is going to sound really cringe, so I know this isn't quite right, but like 5 tips to prepare for your Viva.
Yeah.
And you might go, oh, that will be really useful. I know that's not useful to me right now in this moment, but in 4 years' time. And then you capture it into your system, and then you organize your system so that you can find things. And I loved it. He gives these 3 types of note takers, which I thought was really useful because I feel like there's this kind of feeling that like people will present the perfect way to take notes, and it can often be like really unhelpful if the way that person takes notes is not the same as you. Then you're just going to be like, oh, that doesn't quite work for me. Like a lot of like, one of the ones that really annoys me is people will tell you like, oh, like don't copy paste an entire article. Highlighting doesn't help you remember stuff. But he's like, well, sometimes the goal isn't to remember things because for most of your life you're not remembering for exams. So actually having the whole article and highlighting means you can come back and read your highlighted sections.
Yeah.
This is part of the still, but he has these 4 types of note takers. There's the architect. The reason I'm looking over here is I'm looking at my notes. The architect has a top. They have like a top-down view of their note systems. They're looking for they're building their notes. They know what they want. They know what information they're looking for, and then they're going to go out into the world and kind of find the note information to fill out their note system. And they'll have space for kind of impromptu stuff, but it's very organized. The gardener is kind of like me. That's why I'm using a program called Obsidian. You're just putting stuff into the system and waiting until something happens. Like for me, I've been collecting ideas for ages, and then I was like, oh, a podcast is a good idea. So when I found this with Eleanor, I'd already had a lot of resources that I was able to just drag in, even though this was before I'd started doing the note system. That's kind of, I'm a gardener. I like just finding things and kind of putting them into my system and seeing what sticks and kind of letting the system tell me what I'm interested in. Like, I'll take if I take 100 notes, and then the system is like, oh, you've taken a lot of notes on this thing, which is why I love Obsidian is networks. You can see a network and I can be like, oh, what is this connection? I didn't realize I had 4 things talking about this same subject. And then you go, oh, it's this subject. Huh. maybe I should write an article about this or something. There's the librarian that kind of the librarian likes collecting information and finding really neat ways to store it, and likes sharing the knowledge for itself with other people. Like they like collecting their notes and being like, oh, this is why I love, like, this is what I found, this is what I think you'll find useful, this is what I think is interesting, that kind of stuff, and really enjoys the process of collecting the notes and the information for itself. And the other type of note takers are just students who are just like, I am trying to collect notes for this thing, I'm trying to collect my notes for my next interview or my next job or my next class. And I don't care about remembering anything beyond that point. And different, like, note-taking apps will be useful for different purposes.
I think I'm the librarian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. When I was reading it, I was like, Eleanor's a librarian. I thought it was really... Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's why I really like Notion, because it's super duper flexible. So you can arrange all your notes and you can constantly move them around as, I arranged all my Dungeons and Dragons notes on Notion and, chef's kiss. It's so good. Also, it took them off my Google Drive, which is running out of space. But it's just, it's so good to be able to put them however I want.
So my main issue with Notion is I don't like capturing into Notion because it's really hard to just get a fresh page to just start taking notes on. And it's always a bit finicky moving notes around on Notion. Like, I always find copy pasting very annoying.
Ah, interesting. I didn't really find that. My problem with Notion is that because I'm doing a STEM subject, but like with a chemistry slant, it doesn't have any subscripts or superscripts, which is really annoying for writing chemical formulas.
Mm.
Which is weird, right? It should have subscripts and superscripts.
See, this is why you'd like Obsidian, because Obsidian has community plugins.
Well, you just got me onto Notion, so you're going to have to really sell it to me.
Yeah, so my favourite thing of Obsidian is, like, because it's so easy to make new notes, and it has this system where you can link notes together, and then it shows you. I'm gonna send you a screenshot of this, so and it will be in the. I'll show it on screen. This is my. I mean, I haven't started putting many notes in. Or Discord is. You're gonna see our chat one sec. You're gonna see it on screen right now, or you're gonna be like, well, you're gonna actually you're not, because you're probably not gonna see the Discord call. Eleanor, look at that. Look at that. It's so beautiful.
That's so pretty.
Yeah. So what's going on there is I'm using the Power system for sorting my notes. This is something else in the book, which is projects, areas, resources, archives. So projects are like things you're trying to do at the moment. So for instance, Teather Time is a project. You can actually see, if you see in the bottom right hand corner next to green, Teather Time actually has 2 notes next to it. Next down in the bottom right hand corner next to the yearly themes, which is a green bit and resources.
So are the dots projects or are they just pages?
So the coloured dots are pages.
Mm-hmm.
The grey dots are notes that I think could be pages in the future, but aren't right now. Mm-hmm. So that big cluster of things, that's YouTube video ideas, and then all of those notes are individually could be a note in the future.
Right. All of them could be pages in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just going to start coughing now because I've got a cold. It's pretty epic.
Do you want to pause to take a drink?
I've been drinking a lot, but like, yeah, we'll work with it. Yeah. So the red ones are projects. The kind of beigey colour are notes in areas. So for instance, a lot of the beigey ones come from I've got a series of notes for D&D encounters, because if I want to run a D&D adventure in the future, I want to have a pool of possible encounters I've already come up with. I want to just be able to I need to run a session tonight, out of the blue, let me just look at my D&D encounters, let me search for all the notes connected to that. Oh, now I've got a bunch. The light green is... The light green is is the resources, so that's kind of the so projects are things you're doing right now. Areas is things you're doing a lot of the time, but they don't really have an action at the moment. Like for me, D&D finance tends to be an area for a lot of people, unless you're trying to get a mortgage right now. Resources are like things you think might be useful. And archives is things you have like no use for right now. You're like, I'm just holding on to this because either I have used it in the past or I think I'm going to use it a long way in the future, but it has no use. So the idea is when you capture a note, you should try and put it in capture, and then you should try and capture it, and you should see, is there a project related to it? Is there an area related to it? Is there a resource related to it? Or does it go in archives?
Mm-hmm.
And the idea behind that is you can spend all your time sorting your notes, but like fundamentally you want them to be actionable. You want your notes to be there when you want to use them. So store them by what you're going to use them for instead of by like, oh, here are all my notes on physics. But like you don't. When are you ever going to need? Unless you're a student, when you are going to like store by subject because that's actionable. You've got an exam. But even then, you're going to want to do it by module. So sort it by module. Be like, this is for question 1. This is for question 2.
So is it just the reason that you're using this new piece of software, which I now can't remember the name of?
Obsidian.
Obsidian. Is the reason that you're using Obsidian just because it orders the notes like this, which is nice?
Yeah, it's also that my issue with Notion is not very searchable. I don't know if you've ever used the search feature in Notion, but it sucks. It's so slow, and it's just not fun to use. Like, I don't know, like I've never used it because it's so hard to use. You have to know where your notes are.
Yeah.
And that means you kind of have to know where you want to put them beforehand, and that's just not how I take notes.
Yeah.
And if you want to capture something into Notion, creating a space to capture is so many clicks. So you have to load up Notion, and you have to like find the right page. Then you have to start writing. With Obsidian, I can go in, I can press a button which creates a note for today, and I can just capture into that note for today, and then I can sort that note later.
I guess I feel like I don't really use Notion for anything other than like long. Like I don't use it.
It's
for
amazing
quick
for
notes.
teamwork. I love Notion for teamwork.
But I mean,
for writing, Obsidian has all the same features as Notion does for writing long stuff.
I feel like I use it for writing long chunks of things, or like medium chunks of things. If I'm going to be writing something really long, I'm going to do it in Word. Or something formal, I'll do it in Word. If I'm just writing myself kind of short notes, if I'm just writing a don't forget this thing, or like my shopping list, I do it in Google Keep. I guess I don't really have that many like, oh, I just need to... There's almost no scenario in which I think, oh, I need to save that for...
I think you're missing a lot of thoughts then, because do you never have those thoughts in the middle of the day where you're like, oh, I've just had this idea, or I've read this interesting thing, or I've heard this interesting thing? Like, what do you do when you hear something interesting on your podcast you like?
Well, I think you massively overestimate the academic quality of the podcasts I listen to.
It doesn't have to be academic. When do you must have heard a story or something where you're like, oh, that's really interesting. Or like, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I look it up in the moment, or I decide that it's not. So, for example, I listen to an ancient history podcast called Ancient History Fangirl. Check it out. And if they're telling me something that's really cool, I will either look it up in the moment or I won't bother. And I just generally go, well, if I don't look it up in the moment, that's fine. Because it's not the end of the world if I don't investigate that particular niche bit of Greek mythology. The only thing would be if I'm listening to a D&D podcast and they do something cool, but then I have a D&D section in my Notion, so I could just start a page which is just DM ideas.
Exactly that. But also, my point to you would be, okay, let's imagine the final bit of that code thing is express, and his point is that we should be trying to like express our ideas and like what we want to do, because like the point of having all that saving information is so that you've then got it at your fingertips when, say, you want to give a talk, Eleanor, like you're giving a talk and you want to throw some in. I think it's a little bit harder for you because obviously you're in a very academic field, so it's like a less likely thing.
Yeah.
But say you want to run, you're doing something with your friends, someone asks you a question about that area of history, and you're like, oh, I wish I could remember what they said. But instead you've got it in your system, so you just search your system for that thing, and you go, oh yeah, here's that note I saved on that history bit. It's just in my archive here.
Yeah, but I guess in that scenario, if someone was like, oh, if I was telling somebody about the thing that one of the interesting things they talked about was that like there are versions of Aphrodite in which Aphrodite is like maybe intersex or trans, and I thought that was really interesting. But if someone asked me about that, I'd just Google it, because all I'd have to Google is like trans Aphrodite would probably do it, but I also remember the name Aphroditus. So I just don't necessarily see the point of making notes about loads of things. I feel like I just clutter up my life with loads of notes of things that I've listened to that I'm probably never going to look back at. Also, I feel like...
But you're already taking some notes, because I'm assuming you take notes in your lectures.
Yeah.
So it's the idea of, like...
Although, to be fair, I mostly just use the slides the lectures have given us.
Yeah, but what is... How do I explain this? Why are you listening to that? If it's just pleasure, is there nothing do you never read articles online where you're like, that is an interesting idea, I wish that would stay in my life?
Kind of, but I guess I don't do, like, self-improvement in that way.
It's not even like a self-improvement idea, it's just like a... Do you never... I think the idea is like, yes, you could Google search it, but it might take you 5 minutes to Google search it, and then you find an article and you have to read the article for the bit you want. Whereas if you take a note of it, and then you make a very simple bullet point list of the things you remember, that means then when you want to find that thing, you search your notes and you find it. And you might find that in the future you're writing something where you want an example, and you can use that note as that example, which you wouldn't have considered without having saved it.
Yeah, I feel like that, to me, would take the... Because when I'm... In the example of listening to podcasts, or if I was, I don't know, watching a documentary or something, I'm just doing that purely for fun. And there are some scenarios in which I would want to take notes, but to me, the action of, like, picking up my phone and taking a note takes me out of the moment of listening to that thing or watching that thing or reading that thing, especially books. Oh my goodness. Like, of these podcasts are the easiest because I can keep listening to it while I do it, but it takes me out of that moment, and then I'm not enjoying the experience of it because I'm, like, not there in the present in the same way.
Yeah, I think that's just a mindset thing, though, isn't it? Because aren't you just thinking of notes as something you do during work?
Probably.
Like, why do notes have to be a work thing? Why can't you just, like... One of the examples he gives is, like, the Regency, like, Curiosity book or General book. It's called something like that. Where, like, people would just take notes of things that interested them in books. Like, we have this perception in our culture that you, like, read and you must get, like... And to put down the book is kind of almost rude, whereas you could just take a note of it. Just be like, that's really cool. And he's not saying you need to know everything. He says in his book, once you kind of get in the rhythm of it, and you've got a lot of notes, he takes 1 or 2 notes of things a day. There's only a couple of new things that he finds interesting enough that he wants to remember. But, like, there's some statistic he gives where, like, the average human reads, like, the equivalent now of, like, on social media of, like, 17 newspapers. Like, you'd think there's at least 2 ideas in there that you'd find interesting.
I guess maybe that... Because I guess what I'm realising is that I do take notes in some ways, but what I'm doing is I'm doing them all... Like, I'll save Instagram posts.
Yeah, that's a classic example of that, yeah.
And what I should actually be doing, for example, because, like, mental health Instagram posts, I've got a collection of them, but I also have some blog articles that I've read, or just things like inspiration. Like, I read a fantasy novel, and I was like, if one of the characters can forgive himself for literally murdering a bunch of civilians, I can probably forgive myself for not doing the washing up.
This is classic things you should be noting down.
Yeah.
Now imagine, instead of them being kind of lost in Instagram, they're in a place so that if you say, on this podcast, wanted to talk about, like, right now, I've used Obsidian 3 times to check the notes I've made on how to build a second brain, so that I know I'm remembering things correctly, and it's prompting me what are the things I thought were interesting when I was listening that I want to talk about now.
Alright, you've persuaded me, damn it. Not necessarily to download Obsidian, because I just learned how to use Notion.
No, but like, you're a librarian, and his advice is to use Notion.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I've done a terrible rendition. The book is good. Get it as a paperback, skim read it out of that.
Okay.
You don't have to read every word. Just read it for the bits you find interesting and to get the overview of his idea of the system.
I feel like I need to get that... I don't know what it is, but I heard it advertised on a bunch of podcasts, and I was always like, what's the point in that? There's like an app or something where you can.
Oh, there's something really like like give you summaries of books.
Yes.
I think that totally misses the point because you're getting someone else's summary.
True.
I don't want to list because
I never saw the point in those. It's just in the last 2 seconds it occurred to me.
But like the point is, I don't know, what I'm saying is like this. I think this book will add enough value to your life that like think about it as like if you like want to think about it in a really materialistic way. It only has to add. If you read a book, right, it gives you. It takes. Let's say it takes the audiobook is 6 hours, so that you less than that to read. Let's assume it takes 5 hours out of your life.
Yeah.
Imagine how if each time you have to look, you start saving stuff, and that saves you cumulatively across your life. It could start saving you more time.
Yeah, I have to say I do think that.
And it's not a very businessy book.
I feel like this is another topic for another day about why I don't read self-help books, because I feel like the issues are too nuanced for like me to give a little summary now. This probably would be a good book, but I just realistically don't think that I'm likely to read it. But I do like the idea of taking lots of notes. I think part of what puts me off taking...
The point is not taking lots of notes. That's why I know you need to read it.
I mean...
You're not... I can't explain the point properly in a
podcast.
Like,
I said that wrong, but what I meant was like having that like cohesive note-taking system in place. But yeah, they're like... Because what I think... The initial reaction I had was negative, because I used to like note things down... And then I found that it just kind of cluttered up my life. My digital life with notes of stuff where I was like, I still have notes of books that I think would be good to read from like 10 years ago that I'm never going to get around to reading. And I feel like notes can tend to just clutter up my life like that.
So that's why you need to note them by action instead of by category.
Yeah.
Because imagine, so those books, are all of those books on the same topic?
No.
So imagine if instead of searching that book by, I'm going to put all, because I feel there's a temptation to write a reading list. And that's great for fiction, because that's all the same action, because it's all books you want to read. Oh, I don't know what book to read next for my spare time, and here's my list.
Well, actually, because I read almost exclusively for fiction.
Yeah.
Which, as I said, I feel like that's another... Maybe I'll talk about that next weekend, about why I don't really read non-fiction. I think it's more... I could actually categorise fiction into, like... Oh, I want to read a book with a black protagonist, because I've got some saved which are, like, from black creators being like, hey, read these fantasy novels. That kind of thing. And I've got them saved in loads of different places. And I guess if I had them in my Notion... probably with my reading challenges, then I could be like, I want to read another book. What's next to read? Yeah. And I could also probably do like I want to set up a reading page now.
I'm telling you, it's one of those books and systems where you read it and you're going, is this worth it? I'm telling you, you put 5 minutes into it, you're like, oh my god, this is so cool. Because it's not about a whole new system. It's about you saying, oh, notes just clutter up my life. He's like, yeah, all of that stuff clutters up your life. So what you need to do is you need to dump most of your notes into an archive folder and then start bringing the stuff out which is useful to you. What are you trying to do at the moment? Like, you've probably, like, are your notes in a way where you could easily, like, you say you use the lecture slides, right? Imagine if you, during the lecture, next to the slides, or like after the lecture, made a couple notes about the slide in your own word.
Yeah.
And then this is the distill part of it. So you take the lecture slide, you highlight the important bits, right? Because let's be real, half the stuff lecture, in my experience, lectures put on the slides is not always the most useful, right?
Oh, man, I wish that were the case in STEM subjects.
Okay, well, it's different for you, but, like, you go through and you highlight the important bits, or, like, the key ideas that you think you're going to need for the exam.
Yeah.
Make that a new note, right? And then you might go through those highlighted texts later on. You might bold some of that note and go, oh, this is the ideas I'd want to, like, reference. If I was referencing this or, like, something like that. And then you go through and you go, okay, I've got this bold stuff. I've touched... The idea is you kind of... You narrow down what you're saving each time you touch the note. Finally, you write about the idea in your own words. So then when you come to use that idea, you can kind of draw on it. So rather than having to go back to the lecture slides, you go back to your highlighted lecture slides, or you go back to your bullet pointed list, or you go back to your your bold, or the highlights with bold in them, and so it becomes easier to see what is the important detail here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, that sounds cool. And
I think and the final idea is this: like, if you were to take all those notes, it'll help you have creative ideas because you're going to have stuff in that system. You're like, oh, I've got all of these notes on this idea. Let me just turn that into a blog post. Let me turn that into a video. Let me turn that into a podcast segment. Because I've just got, look, there's all these notes I've collected because I clearly find this thing interesting. I can just talk about it because I now have the knowledge.
I do sometimes feel that some of these things are like written by creative people for creative people. And I'm not saying I'm an uncreative person, but the kind of creating that I do is like knitting. Like it's so I think sometimes
imagine if you had a Notion page with knitting patterns that you've looked at and gone, that looks cool.
I have a Pinterest board, but how
that works then you're already doing it because the Pinterest board is good.
But I just don't really do them very much.
You don't need to though.
Oh yeah, I do this, don't I? Because I also have a YouTube playlist of sewing patterns. Like, all right, I'll shut up. Yeah, I do it already. I just do it in a. That's why I'm like, what's the point of this? Because I'm already doing it just in a chaotic fashion. I think this is such a funny thing that so often happens. Is you're like, there's a cool idea, and I'm like, what rubbish is this? And you're like, you do it already. You just do it in a really messy, homebrewed way.
Well, I think I think the idea is that the messiness isn't the problem. The problem is that there isn't. The idea of using Parrot is not that I'm not expecting all of my notes to end up in Obsidian. I'm not expecting every single idea I ever have to end up in Obsidian. But I'm hoping that in the future, when I come to do a new project, I will be able to go into my YouTube saved videos and go, oh look, here, well I'm going to save those in Obsidian because that works better for me. But I'm going to be able to go into my Obsidian, I'm going to be able to go into my Notion, I'm going to be able to go into like all of those things, and I'm going to be able to find, oh look, here's all the things that I'm really interested in. And it just kind of comes to me, and that way the notes won't feel cluttered. Because the notes I'm not using are just sitting in a resource folder, like under one of the folders I've already made for resources is, let's look, what's a resource folder I've got? I've got my yearly themes, that's going to be a whole other episode. I've got my yearly themes stored in a resource folder, because I don't want to access them on a regular basis, but about once a month I want to go back for them. And now they're in an easy to place find. And on Obsidian, I can just do Control-O and search Year of the Forge, and I'll come to my note for this year and remind myself, what am I doing this year? Why am I here?
Yeah, and I think I do have a tendency to set up a system, and then that system stops working, and instead of tidying up the old system, I just move to a new system.
Yeah, and I think the point of this book is not there's many different systems of note taking. Like I tried Zettelcasting, and I was immediately like, oh, this does not work for me. I don't like Zettelcasting. Like I feel like this would be very useful in a very specific location, but I don't. The pure Zettelcasting is like pure mess. It's just like all of the mess with tags, and it's a tagging system. And I'm a folders person.
Yeah.
So like it didn't work for me, but I really like Parrot. So I think I'd say find a note taking system for you, because I didn't even know note taking systems were a thing, and now I found them. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. If I go and do another, I'm going to like learn something in the future, right? Now, I don't agree, but I'm going to go to it. I'm like, I've now got a note-taking system, and that's going to have such an impact on how I revise and stuff.
Yeah. That's really cool. Although I have to say, I don't ever have to revise from a taught module ever again.
But now I'd say the thing to remember is like, you're not going to be doing stuff where like, you've probably got good at remembering information for a year, because that's how long you need to remember it for. But like, you're going to be doing stuff from now on which you might want to reference for the rest of your working career.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have to repeat work. You don't want to like be like in 10 years time like, oh, I did this thing in the second year of my PhD. I remember reading this article which was really good. And there's workflows for like, look up, there'll be a workflow for like something that saves like academic papers and like sorts them into Notion for you.
Oh, okay. I was going to be
Because-
like, Mendley.
Yeah, but like, you know what I mean? Like, can you imagine? It doesn't have to be like that, but there's gonna be stuff where you're like, oh, I wish I could find that note from like
Yeah.
ages ago.
I'm still working on it for academic papers, trying out different
Yeah.
things to see what works best.
Mm. But but read How to Build a Second Brain,
Okay.
because I think you're already doing it. Eleanor, this book to me is as good as Getting Things Done. You know how much I've talked about Getting Things Done for the last 5 years? You know how you use a Getting Things Done app because Todoist is built on the GTD system? This book is like the next step because of where technology is now compared to when Getting Things Done were built. This is the next book. Things are now marketed as, oh, Obsidian's marketing line is this is a safe space to build your second brain.
Yeah, I have heard of the second brain concept before. Is it
So,
available in the
read
library?
Maybe, yeah, I'd guess so. They have a copy as a famous book. Get it. You'd be able to. I'd recommend for you. I'd recommend getting like an ebook version if you
I don't read
mind.
ebooks.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Get a book. I'll get it.
I will borrow it from the library because I won't buy
Cool.
it.
That's fair.
Okay.